welcome back. We are Friday the 19th of September 2025 and it's around about 7 o'clock in the morning. Yes, it's the morning, and once again, like I always do, trails in the sky, thin trails, that thin, and there's more trails being formed right here. Look at that. There was one craft that flew over, didn't give off a trail, but this one seems to be. So let's track this aircraft on this lovely morning. Look at how many planes were in one given moment. It's crazy, isn't it? Right, okay, let's have a look. So what do we got so far? Well, this one I went past is flying through Dublin to Paris, and it's travelling at 37,000 feet. It's Commercial Airlines, Air France. I think this one, approaching right now, is from Dublin to Verona. Shut up. And there's a Ryanair flight travelling at 37,000 feet. So yeah, it's at the right altitude. And it's actually giving off a persistent trail. It's actually lingering in that area. So what I'm going to do is track the humidity. Right, here we have, look at this. Now, look at this, ladies and gentlemen. Now, tell me, from the base level of 30,000 feet, the humidity level is round about, well, in areas it's like 30%. I would say 40 to 50%. So it's way low for persistent trails to linger in the sky. So let's track another aircraft flying over. But once again, like I said, it's got to be over 70% or 100% according to what website. So it's too low, way too low for, according to the mainstream media side of things. But anyway, check out this aircraft. Right, the second aircraft is this one flying over, and you can see right there, the last one, or the bottom one, I should say. That one, it's actually given off a persistent trail in that area. Now, that aircraft that flew past a moment ago didn't give off a persistent trail, but it looked like it gave off a persistent trail, but it didn't linger as a persistent trail. It's too early for that, Nick. So yes, here we go. That is the aircraft. Look, you see, it's given off a massive trail, look, but it's not lingering. But it lingered in that area there. So how does the trail dissipate when it's spread out in that area, when it looked like the same consistency coming out of the aircraft? You see? Ask questions, man. Yeah, I've got another one. So yes, as you've seen through the app, the humidity level, it's a lot lower than the mainstream explanation is for trails to persist. I think I said that many times now. But yeah, oh, is that trail gonna linger? I don't think it is, actually. Okay. Well, I'm probably a meteorologist. Now I'm just going by the whim here, that the fact that, there's not enough humidity in the atmosphere, but probably like small little pockets, which is why we're getting persistent trails in one area and not the other. You can see the same aircraft is not giving off a persistent trail, but you saw it a moment ago giving off a persistent trail, but in that area it's not. But if you look at the trails, look, it's really thin. So maybe the trails are thin because there's not enough humidity, or is it like a discharge from the aircraft? Why is this being sprayed on purpose? To block out the sun? Well, it's very, very thin. Like I mentioned in my previous episode. Look, what's that supposed to do? Block out the sun? The sun's not even out yet. And we're starting to get this white haze. I don't know if you can see it. I don't know if you can see that white haze that is starting to approach. Clear sky, whitish haze. Trails next to white haze. So again, I said that in my previous episodes, in the past 35 parts actually. Very recurring thing I'm seeing. Trails with white haze. Thin trails in the morning. Sometimes they're big and thick, but we need to track the humidity on that one because, you know, I'm not just going to jump to conclusions that it's sprayed on purpose. Now, if you have a look at this, that aircraft that flew past, look what it made, that. But it gave off a persistent trail going across. It looked thick, didn't it? It looked like it was going to persist, and now that's dissipated. So how come that's dissipated? Alright, okay, okay. Probably something to do with the atmosphere, I don't know, but anyone can explain. Look, there's another one, look at that. In the same area. Right, let's have a look at this aircraft flying over and see whether or not, there is, Is it a contrail? It is a contrail, because look, it's dissipating. Pretty much what we're seeing in the sky at the moment with the aircraft. They're not really lingering, but it looks like it's going to spray, doesn't it? So that condensation trail looks exactly the same as the chem being sprayed, isn't it, when you look at it? But it's dissipating. However, it did fly at the same probably altitude as this trails in the sky right here. So let's track the aircraft. Okie dokie, this aircraft is Ryanair. It's flying from Cork to London, so 26,000 feet. So yeah, actually, yeah. No, I know, it's still in the altitude, 25,000 feet. You still get trails being formed. Yeah, okay, well, that doesn't really make any sense then, in that case, does it? Really, when you think about it. There, or was it that plane there? Ooh, might be that one, actually. Okay, I'm getting confused. Nevertheless, they're both travelling at the altitude where it would give off a persistent trail. 40,000 feet, that's quite high, actually. Oh, I don't know, actually, come to think about it. Yeah, that might be the aircraft. Well, it's either that one or that one. I think that one's probably a bit too over my head. And I'm going to show you an aircraft which is flying over right now. That is flying from Dublin to Rome. It's travelling at 35,000 feet and is Aer Lingus, whatever it's called. I'm going to show you it right now. Right, there we go. That's the aircraft. This is the Aer Lingus. And it's not giving off a persistent trail. But you're travelling at 35,000 feet. And you know it's coming from the engines, because look, see the gap between? Yeah, you can see it's Aer Lingus. Yeah, I can see it. It's the tail that is bluish green. I can see it, and the engines as well. I'm at this point now where I can actually identify the planes, because I keep seeing the same thing, like Ryanair, Aer Lingus, which is this one we're seeing here, EasyJet. So yeah, it was all commercial airline, but I have seen some tankers, but they haven't really given off a trail. But yeah, that aircraft is travelling at 35,000 feet, and it's not giving off a trail. Okay, interesting. So we've got 26,000, 35,000 and 40,000. But some of them that I've tracked have not given off a persistent trail. But that one there is very small. I'm going to be honest with you, I think now looking at the outcome so far, we've got a lot of this cloud coming in, so I think it's going to cover a lot of the sky. And I did notice that yesterday with a lot of cloud cover coming in. I put a time lapse on here and you can see the trails way above, so you're thinking, well, if they're going to block out the sun, how come we've got all this cumulus clouds that is technically going to block out the sun more than actual trails itself? So there we go. Alright, well, a little bit of a trailing morning. So there you go, right. Right, a short time has passed. And like I said, I started to notice the cumulus, which is the big clouds, what we're seeing over here, started to come into fruition. Well, it's coming my way. And we've got some cirrus. I've been saying this for so many times that the fact when we see cirrus, we're going to find trails in the sky. We've just got an aircraft that's gone past. But I don't really see any trails in the sky. Bear in mind, we do have that cumulus. Obviously this we're talking about here. It's kind of hard to tell. Actually, when you look at it, there's like, you can see a trail in the mix of that cloud. So I guess there is a few trails, but the humidity is still at the same percentage. So I don't understand why the trails were forming in the areas I was seeing when the percentage is a lot lower for trails to persist. But maybe they dissipated quickly until we look at the time lapse and observe the whole day. Maybe the trails dissipated. It's kind of hard to tell, but yes, trails do dissipate, and I've got videos of that. Well, I did have videos, but I accidentally deleted it. It's on my time-lapse videos somewhere on my Rumble channel. Oh, actually, no, come to think about it, look at that. We do have a trail. That's definitely a trail, 100%. Yeah, okay, well, we do have some trails in the sky. So maybe, with a bit of time, it might clear. I can track the trails. Look at this aircraft right there. That's definitely over 35,000. It's got to be. Shall I track it? Simply because, look, you got that, well, it's a condensation trail, but next to it, you have that trail that I just shown. Right. So you've got that in the sky. Depending on what altitude this trail is formed, I'm going to track that aircraft. Right. I believe this aircraft is this one right here. I'm not too sure. I've checked the map and I think this is pretty much accurate. And this is Manchester to Tenerife, traveling at 38,000 feet. So yes, it is at the altitude for it to give a persistent trail. And this is a TUI Airway, so yes, commercial airline. Once again, commercial. But it didn't give off a persistent trail, did it? No, when it's at the right altitude. Let's have a look at the humidity right now, just to see whether or not it's changed. Oh, look at that, I'm an idiot. If you have a look at the top screen, point an arrow to it, you can see the base level where I've actually taken this measurement, 30,000 feet, and it's actually telling you the humidity right there. I can point and it's flipping telling me, oh, what an idiot, Nick. Derp. Okay, so this area, whoa, way too low, way too low. 40, 41, 40. Going up to about 50 near Bristol, Weston-super-Mare. Okay, well, I'm going to be honest with you. Yes, let's look at the whole area so far. Yeah, even like 38%. Right. Okay, well, the mainstream explanation for this, it's not making sense. And we'll just go around in circles. You can have a look at the humidity so far. So let's put it right bang in the middle right here. So 46%, where right here, according to ChatGPT and other news outlets or mainstream outlets, will say that a persistent trails needs to be at the altitude above 25,000 feet, which I'm taking at the base level of 30,000 feet, which we're seeing a lot of the aircraft fly now. It's given off a persistent trail, but the percentage is too low because it needs to be 70% and not 46%. Again, so once again, the mainstream explanation for this is actually wrong because you're seeing trails in the sky. It's right there, you see it. There's actually one in the background there making its way up. So yes, you see, but I need to question this. How does this humidity work? I'm going to put a GIF on the screen to show you how humidity flows. It's a bit like, I would say like the jet stream, but in a different manner, okay? Probably not the right explanation for it. But it flows, and sometimes you get like pockets of moisture or humidity in the atmosphere. Now, I don't know how to track that. Well, I do with the humidity level that I got, but it seems to be more of a broader base level like this. It's more in a wider aspect. It's not small little pockets, you see. So I don't really know until I probably get a more detailed app to have a look what's going up there, because if it's to do with the humidity, and the humidity is saying it's 40%, when the mainstream saying for a trail to persist in the sky needs to be above 70% or even 100%, and it's like 60% lower than it should be. So I'm asking those questions. Right, a bit of time has passed. It's coming up to 12 o'clock, and if I turn the camera around, look, we've got some good trails, some really good trails at the moment. That there and that is in the mix of that, like, it looks like a white haze, like a big blanket coming up. I can't tell until I look at the time lapse. If we're saying, if that there is a trail, look how big it's got. Might be, it's hard to tell, isn't it? But all in all, look at that. Beautiful. Here's an overall view so far. So in some areas it's got a small little trail, but in this area it's big. Look how big the trails are spreading out. Yeah, look at that. Interesting. But we do have that white haze. But once again, humidity is too low. Right, it's a bit more of a landscape view. You can see the trails are a lot thicker and bigger than I've seen in previous months. So yeah, in certain areas, yeah, for sure. Still got a big cloud cover, which this kind of goes to show about the fact that what I'm really observing is such a very small portion of the sky. So yeah, once you go out and have a little look, have a bit more of a landscape view, you can kind of see what clouds are up in the distance, really. And like I mentioned before with that white haze, that the fact that once you get that white haze, which is known as cirrus stratus, or some sort of stratus, or cirrus, you tend to get trails being formed in that area. But like I said before, I keep on saying this, the percentage is just way too low for trails to form in the sky, but we're seeing it. So, mainstream media, I have debunked you. Looks a bit hazy, doesn't it? Now, that could be contributed to the trails, because around my area, they did look a bit quite traily, isn't it? It's kind of hard to make out, but nevertheless, we'll check through the time lapse at the end of this video, and we'll have a little look to see what actually these trails do. So maybe, do these trails actually block out the sun? It's an old typical British countryside, and as we look up, can we see any trails? It's a bit cirrusy, isn't it? A little bit cirrusy. It's kind of hard to tell, but yeah, I have to admit I do love these old country roads we have in England. We should get an overall landscape view in a minute. Hold on, let's have a look. Yeah, look at that. Look at that. Big lengthy trail being formed by that aircraft. I tell you what, I'm going to track that, and I'm going to track the humidity. The temperature has actually risen quite a bit. Look at that. Cirrus, I think. Yep, cirrus. We've got some cirrus over there. So I think for the time being, keep my eyes more up to the skies. I've been quite lazy, I have to admit. Well, not lazy, I've been busy. I do have a life, but anyway, I'm going to track this aircraft. Right, this aircraft about to fly over, it's a commercial airline, and it's going from Boston to Frankfurt, and it's travelling at 37,000 feet. Yes, 37,000 feet. Actually, it might be this one. Boston to Dubai, 35,000. Oh, I'm not too sure. I think it's this one. It's about to fly over. Check this out. There's that trail. It's actually looking quite white hazy, and it's actually just kind of see the first outline of the halo around the sun. 22-degree halo. Well, it's not a fully formed halo like this. It's only like half or quarter, 3/4 maybe. Anyway. Right. Another rainy day. It's actually quite warm. Yeah, it's actually really warm today. It's like proper gardening weather. Shame that all my plants are dying off. Anyway, there we go. I've seen a lot of X's today. Actually this week, frankly enough. Right. We're coming up to around about nearly 7:30. Oh no, sorry, 1:30. Where did I get that 7 from? Anyway. Right, let's have a little look, see what we've got. Anything we can observe and analyse in the sky. Okay, so we had those bunch of trails now gone off in the distance. We do have a few of them. Look, there's zoom in a little bit. Zoom in, you can see that. There's one there, a very short one, and one tall one. We've got another one at the back there, which is getting quite thin. But we do have this. I don't know if you can see it in the camera. If I zoom out a little bit, you see that it's like a milky white haze, like a little veil you can see piercing the sky. So that's a sign there's something called stratus, which it doesn't necessarily cause a halo around the sun. This is going by my books. I'm not dealing with old mainstream science. I'm dealing with what my books are saying, which is the same science anyway. But nevertheless, it's not producing a halo because it's part of something called stratus. It's a photograph of stratus. You can clearly see it's a bit like you can consider it like a fog, basically, but it's just 35,000 feet up in the air, or thereof, base level. So yeah, really interesting morning. I have to admit, I can't wait to view the time lapse because it might be another chaotic day in terms of the clouds. I mean, what's going on with the clouds? Yeah, interesting. Right, I'll pop back in a short time and see if we get more persistent trails. Once again, we're at this point where we check the time lapse camera to see whether or not these trails actually blocked out the sun. Now, bear in mind, I've only seen a very small portion of the sky, but after the time lapse, we'll look through the satellite and have a full-on perspective of what these trails actually did. So let's go and have a look. Let's put it a bit bigger so you can see. It's a few days after, and I can't really remember what happened. All I remember was a bit traily after 10 o'clock. So what can we see here? You can see the trails are forming. And obviously you got this cumulus cloud coming in. And bear in mind, the humidity level was about 40%, which is way too low for trails to persist in the sky because it needs to be above 70%. So the mainstream, or the mainstream science, I should say, so you had a lot of this cumulus cloud pretty much covering the landscape at the moment. But eventually that clears to reveal what's happening above 25,000 feet. There we go. Well, that was the first trail I saw. I wasn't too sure whether or not there was actually trails in the sky. Obviously, because it had this big, thick cumulus cloud coming to fruition. But as that dissipated, you can actually see the trails forming. Yeah, it's definitely a trail right there. I remember this white haze that will obviously pierce the landscape in a bit. And we're going to try and see whether or not it's actually trail related or not. There you go. You can see the trails. There was a lot of X's that day, I remember. There's a fair few trails in the sky. You can clearly see that. This is what I mean by the white haze right here. Because look, the white haze can be a natural cloud, and I got video footage of that forming naturally. In terms of how many trails are in this white haze is another thing. But there's definitely trails in the sky, and they're definitely spreading. I remember the humidity was a lot lower than what the media explanation is, or mainstream science is saying. What's making these trails persist in the sky? There we go. Look at that. That's a big, thick trail. This is a very reoccurring thing I'm seeing with trails like this. I mean, technically, that shouldn't spread out due to the humidity level, technically. But you can see once it's spread out, it becomes really, really thin. So in terms, it's not really going to block out the sun. You need to do so many trails in one area, like trail after trail after trail in that one immediate area to actually spread out and actually block out the sun. There we go. There we go. Perfect. Look at that. So yeah, I mean, if we just pause that there, you can see how big, even how small, I should say, these trails formed first of all. But then eventually it spread it out to that sort of big trail right there. So remember when I said if you find cirrus, you're going to find trails. You can see a bit of cirrus in there as well. Right. Right, check this out. Big trail. Not too sure what this is. Let's just go back. I'm just trying to analyze if that is a trail or not. Let's just go back. We're talking about this here. And there's one thing I noticed how you can identify trails is that the fact that you get like a line that happens first, and then eventually it will all spread out. So I guess you could say that's a trail. And I'm talking about this here. Obviously, that's a trail, obviously, and that there. But is that whole area to do with the trails in the sky? Could well be, actually. It's the same with that as well. Because it's in the area of where the trails are forming. So you could say that's been laid in the distance, and eventually, as it got to my area, it actually spread out completely like this. This is why we'll check the satellite in a minute. Now you can see that milky white haze, which is part of stratus, but it's not creating a halo around the sun. I mean, one can say, oh, that's all been sprayed in the distance and eventually it's all spread out. I mean, sure, I'm not denying that at all, but at the same time, this is a natural cloud. And every time you see stratus or cirrostratus, you'll get trails in the wake of it because it's in the same altitude. That's one thing I've noticed over the years. And it's kind of making a halo around the sun. You can just see it there. But one would argue that the fact that for this to be to do with the trails, like there's one there, you should see line after line after line after line, but you don't see it. This is the thing. It's I don't really know what is creating this white haze because it is a natural cloud, but also the trails can also mimic that. It's just basically artificial. So yeah, you can see trails in there. Look, you can see it. It's creating a very rainbow effect around the sun. It's quite interesting, isn't it? This is perfect. Check this out. This is how I know where trails are in the sky. Remember when I said you got a line going through and eventually it all spreads out? This is exactly what you're seeing. This is how I know where trails are in the sky, especially like loads of trails in the mix of this white haze. That's how I know. Like that, right there. Perfect. So obviously, if I just go back, that trail has been laid probably about an hours before, I would imagine. By the time it's got to my area, it's actually fully spread out. Kind of see where that trail at the back there. Yeah, in the background there, you can see that white haze. There's a trail there, there's a trail there. But it's pretty much been dominated by this cumulus. In fact, that's going to block out the sun more than the trails itself. It's just, I think a lot of people in the community just jump to conclusions because they see this white haze and says, oh, that must be to do with trails because I see a couple of trails in the sky. It's like, well, you just can't contribute that to the white haze because it is, like I said, it's a natural cloud. Again, the trails, the chemtrails, whatever you want to call it, they're there to obviously mimic the white haze, but the white haze is not really blocking out the sun, though, is it? This is the example what I'm basically coming across right here. Huge amount of white haze trail, and you can see trails right here. So it's really kind of hard to say. Like I said, I've only seen a very small portion of the sky. But yeah, I'm not denying it could be contributed to the trails for sure. Look how big the trails are going. Look. So we should see loads of trails in the area due to this white haze, but we don't. It's just like a few bits and pieces there. You see? Coming into night time. Probably was a satellite. Check that out. Whee! Moving on to the satellite. I want to see what these trails actually do. Bear in mind, we had a lot of that cloud cover as well. So I think it's going to be kind of hard to tell whether or not these trails are going to be... Oh, actually, look, if you can kind of see it right here. Look at that right there. So this is the area we want to have a look at right here. Wow. I tell you what, if I go back, look at where France is. Look at that. So loads of trails where France is. Look at that. That's incredible. And there as well. Whoa. There's a fair few trails about, isn't there? Look at that. Well, let's just focus on this area right here. It's kind of hard to tell, isn't it? It really is. Yeah, see the trails that just kind of faint right there. Huh. That's interesting. Look at that. Check that out. Look, right there. Look at that. Creates like a whole circle out of the clouds. Huh. Interesting. Yeah, I don't think we're going to see any trails. You've got this big, because there was cloud cover throughout the day as well, and it kind of blankets the trails in the sky. If it was a clear sky day, like for instance, if we go back to where France is, look at the trails. Look, right here. Let's have a look, see what the trails actually do in this area. Check this out. Now that's a big blanket of trails. Look at that. That's quite impressive. See what these trails actually do. It's coming up to Brussels. So yeah, it is creating a cloud cover as it's moving from France to Brussels, and it's making this like long cloud here. That's quite impressive, isn't it? Anyway, let's go back to England and let's skip ahead to where it was like the peak of the trails, which is pretty much at this time. Really difficult to see. I was hoping to get more of an answer on this one. Yeah, it's a tricky one, isn't it? But bear in mind, every time you see trails, it's always next to like this white blanket. Just one more time. Just click play. Have a little look. There's a load of trails right here. Interesting. Yeah, you can kind of see the trails right there. And it's coming up to night time. Well, that's quite interesting. There was a lot of trails over France, moving up to Brussels. And there were a few trails up north, but did the trails block out the sun? I'm going to be honest with you, I'm really not too sure on this one. There was a lot of trails in the sky, and I have to admit, the trails did spread out quite big. And we did have that cumulus cloud that did pierce the landscape. But in terms of the trails spreading out and making that blanket, I'm not too sure on this one. I'm really not too sure. But like I said, guys, look, chemtrails are real. They're there to block out the sun, yes. But what I'm witnessing at the moment hasn't really done anything, except for the 19th, with the 23rd today. But yes, the 19th of September was quite an interesting one. But this is what we do here on Cosmic Twilight. We track the trails and see what they actually do. So in conclusion, on the 19th of September 2025, did the trails block out the sun? I don't know. I really don't know. But this is an extremely fascinating day. And hopefully one day when it's absolutely clear, pretty much like today, and we can actually see the trails in the sky with no cloud cover whatsoever, I think we'd better pick it up on a satellite and it can actually make a realistic conclusion on what we're actually seeing. Catch me next time on the Cosmic Twilight on YouTube, or Investigate with Nick on Rumble. Or you can find me on Alien Alex every Friday at 9 p.m. I'll see you very soon, guys. Take care.